Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bright Side of Beauty podcast presented by Beyond Skin Aesthetics. I'm your host, Delaney, or as Instagram knows me, Skin by Delaney Danielle. Today's episode is actually a little bit of a heavy one. So I want to give the warning ahead of time, way ahead of time. This might be your time to exit if you feel like your heart is feeling a little bit heavy today, or could be possibly something that sends you into that heavier of a place. This might be an episode that you want to circle back to a little bit later. However, I am so excited for today because we're going to be talking about really the struggles and the triumphs that come from different things that we go through in life, as well as how we as providers can be there for our patients too. So I'll be sharing a little bit about my journey, and then our guest today will be sharing a little bit about hers too. I can't wait for you to meet her. But before I introduce her on and I bring her onto the show to join us, I want to start by telling you a little bit about me and my story. I had kind of alluded to this a couple of episodes back in my intro, but I was very, very, very close to my grandparents. Very close. They were actually my babysitters when I was growing up. And then they moved in with us when we started building onto our house when I want to say I was 9, and they were officially moved in by like 9, 10 years old. And they were with us until 2018. They actually both passed in the same year, exactly 6 months apart. And ironically enough, we moved when I was 9, we moved into the house that my dad had grown up in. And my dad's parents also passed exactly 6 months apart. So it's very strange then for so many years later to have my mom's parents also pass that close together. The impact of them passing was honestly pivotal for my life and what I was going to end up doing with my life. Realizations that I had, directions that I went. I joke about how I had to move to Florida and chase the Disney dream so often. But a lot of that journey actually stems from me almost running away from home in a way. It was kind of my escape of removing myself from a situation that hurt so bad after they passed to something that had always been a dream of mine. And honestly, they had pushed me towards, but I always said wasn't a possibility because I wasn't going to leave them in Ohio. And it was a super pivotal part. So I'm going to start kind of from the beginning with that. But my grandparents were always extremely near and dear to my heart. And when I say that they were like my best friends, the tears are already coming. Goodness gracious. Pregnancy, you guys. I would cry on a normal day about it, but it makes it so much worse when you're pregnant too and your hormones are going crazy. So my grandma would be the first person that I would tell anything to. Excitement wise, dream wise, of something I wanted to do, something that scared me. I mean, she was my rock my entire life, and vice versa. So they actually, when my grandparents moved in with us, it was because my grandma had been diagnosed with a rare form of bone marrow cancer called myelofibrosis, and my grandpa was diagnosed with dementia, all very close together. So they had not quite declined to the point where they needed assistance, and, was why they were moving in with us. But kind of preemptively, we were all so close. And honestly, they lived in Hamilton, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati, when I was very young. And they would take turns and drive up to Columbus and be my babysitters. They would be the ones that drove me to and from school. They would be the ones at, my practices and things. My grandma always volunteered at my school all the way until actually my junior year in high school. She volunteered at the schools that I went to, and she was known to everybody as Grandma. But because of that, I was with her. If I wasn't with friends, if I wasn't playing a sport, if I wasn't in class, I was with my grandma. And I chose to be with her. There were a lot of times where I would, not necessarily even from my friends, which is crazy. It's like my friends understood the relationship and also wanted to be with her. But even from family members, I would have family members that would be like, why aren't you going to your sorority formal? Why are you staying home to, take your grandma to this doctor appointment? And to me, that's where I wanted to be. She was where I wanted to be. And, my grandpa was where I wanted to be. And with my family was where I wanted to be. So, on November 1st of 2018, actually on October 31st of 2018, my parents were in Florida for a work trip for my dad, and I was back and forth between college with my grandma. And I got a call, actually. I had just gone back to class to take an exam and in Bowling Green. So it was a 2.5-hour drive from Columbus. And I was driving to campus just to take this exam, and I was going right back. And she was doing so well. I mean, I had gone to a friend's gender reveal that weekend, and we had eaten cupcakes together and laughed and just had like the best weekend. And I left on, I want to say it was a Tuesday morning to take this exam. And by the time that I got to school, I got a call saying, you need to come back, meet us at Ohio State Medical Center, which is where she was getting her regular cancer treatments, like more of her doctor's appointments versus like she wasn't going through chemo or anything like that. It was more of maintenance of her disease. And by the time that I got there, I only had about an hour with her before she slipped into a coma, and she was gone within 12 hours. My mom, thank you, Southwest. My mom was able to get on a flight within 45 minutes of me getting off the phone with her. And so she was back in Ohio, and, we were with her, but it was very sudden and very traumatic. And through that time, because that was my senior year in college, I was at this pivotal point of, are you going to stay in Ohio? We had already started Beyond Skin Aesthetics at this point. So it was, are you going to stay in Ohio and work the family business and continue down the path that you're on, continue to work the family business? I was already working at BSA. Or are you going to move to Florida and chase this dream that you've had? And, the reason that you went to the school that you went to and you've done the internships that you've done and things like that. And I always said, maybe I'll go in like 5 years, but I'm not going now. I'm not leaving you guys. My grandma always said, like, you need to go. And I just kept saying no. So after that, of course, it was several months before deciding whether or not I was going to move to Florida or not. And there was a series of events that occurred in that time frame that were total God moments. I mean, at one point I turned to one of my best friends and said, like, I just need a literal sign that I'm supposed to move to Florida. And we walked into a coffee shop, like, as I was saying it, and there was a sign on the wall asking, like, it was a question of the day, and it was a Disney question. We both just looked at each other like, oh my gosh. And the barista, when we walked up, was like, oh, do you guys know this answer? You can get your coffee for free. And we were just like, oh, that's so weird. But, like, yes, we do know the answer to that question. She was like, oh, if I could just move to Florida right now and never look back, I would do it. And it was just such a, like, that moment in itself, it was pivotal, of course, as well, of, okay, I've given so many excuses of why I shouldn't move to Florida and why I shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. And this is why I should do this. And that was kind of my excuse per se to step away from my grieving and go to the happiest place on earth. Cause that's the answer. You just run away to Disney World. That's the answer to everything. All that to say, I moved to Florida, and what is extremely parallel actually to my grandma's story is that was that was also what she would do. And there were 2 times in her life where she basically ran away to Florida to regroup and ground herself and come to, and they were the right decision for her in those times. So, when I say that my mom lived in Florida for a period of time, that's part of her story to tell, and that's part of my grandma's story to tell, not mine. But that, looking back now, I realize how parallel that was to her spirit and why I felt so comforted to do that as well. But full circle, and getting back to aesthetics here, is the second time that she went to Florida, she actually started a spa, it was what she would call, in Tampa, Florida. Actually, it was in Madeira Beach, Florida. And I got to see it last year from the outside, the space that I was at. Now it's a real estate office and all of that, but luckily there were pictures and my mom was able to describe it to me. So I was actually able to see the space that she had built this spa out. And she was the first generation to be in the aesthetics industry. She was second generation of female entrepreneurs in my family. Her mother also owned a business. She owned a bar though, so was not as glitzy glammy as the rest of us have turned it out being. But my grandma did have a spa in the 90s in Florida. And also looking at parallels again between my grandma, my mom, and I, we have all come into aesthetics at our own time and for our own reasons. And it has been impactful and powerful when we have done it. And so, my mom getting into aesthetics and starting Beyond Skin Aesthetics with Katie and Dr. McCartney and Dr. Malumba was a big deal in itself. And my grandma actually got to see the start of it and got to see me working, before I moved to Florida. While she was still here, she got to see me working alongside of my mom in the same industry. And during that time, I actually toyed with the thought of, should I go into aesthetics or not? Should I get my hands dirty and get into the room? Should I go to school and make this a career or not? And truthfully, I thought that it was going to be kind of a midlife situation. And so I obviously moved to Florida. I ended up moving back and I went to Ohio State School of Cosmetology and got my advanced aesthetics license there. And I've been in the room ever since. But when I look at my story and how I came into aesthetics and why I am the woman that I am today, and why I have the heart for family that I do today, and why I have the heart for my patients and what my patients are going through today, it is because of my grandma and who she is. It is because of her journey and what she has instilled in me. It is because of the things that I've seen through being with her in the hospital during her treatments and taking her to doctor's appointments. And she saw that as her mission field. She saw that as every nurse that walked in, every doctor that walked in, every PCA, every person that she saw in the hall, every other patient was somebody that she could make smile, because she knew that it was a hard situation to be walking through, but she knew also that she had her faith and she had Christ on her side through it. And she just wanted to share that love of Christ with everybody. And she went into everything with a mission of getting to know the person that she was given the opportunity to be in front of. And getting to know them, not necessarily just preaching to them and, using that as legitimately a mission field, as much as getting to know them as a person. And then if it was a situation that she could share Jesus in that, which, let's be real, is all the time, she would use that opportunity, but on their terms. She met people where they were at. And I learned that from watching her year after year after year. And I learned oh my gosh, I learned so much from her in general. And all that to be said, this episode is coming out on November 1st. And that is because November 1st is a day that is very heavy for both my mom and I. It's heavy for our family. My mom and I take it to a different level. And we have found that I'm actually going to be listening to this episode when it goes live on the beach, because that's what we do every year. We go to Florida because that's where we run away to. And we ground ourselves and remove ourselves so that we can really just be in that emotion. And we don't have to necessarily bring others down as much as we can work through what grief looks like year by year, because it's different year by year. And we'll get into that a little bit more as, my guest today comes to join us. But I wanted to tell all of that before we got into the episode, really so that you, as my friends on the other side, could understand where the heart for this episode is and the heart of who I am and Beyond Skin Aesthetics is. Because that is truly the heart behind it all. That is why family is at the core of who we are. And that is why we enter every single day the way that we do. So today's guest, I actually met while at Aesthetic Next this year. And thank you, Elastin, for the wonderful introduction where we were able to cross paths. I love how brands are able to connect hearts together in a way. So it's so much more than just the products or the services that we are getting from these different brands, but we really are able to connect with other people in our community. And sometimes it's such a God moment. And we always say that together as like, this is just so crazy that we were able to meet when we did and have the similar heart placements that we do towards so many things. And so our guest today is another from the aesthetics industry that I have so much love and respect for. And while at Aesthetic Next, she actually spoke right before my session with Elastin on mental health in the aesthetics industry. And it was so moving for so many people. Honestly, I still kick myself that I wasn't able to listen into the session because I was prepping for my own session and was with the Elastin team right before. I can't wait to hear the replay of all of it, but I knew from that moment that was a connecting factor for us. And she was somebody that my heart was just drawn to, and I needed to get to know better because I missed something in that room. And that is what this conversation is today, is we are connecting all the pieces and we're talking about our hearts for the industry, but also for family and beyond. And I would love for her to tell us a little bit about her aesthetics journey and everything. So without further ado, all of my friends, please welcome my dear friend, Britt, to the Bright Side of Beauty podcast. Hi, Britt.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so sorry that you've been, along for all of my tear ride here, but I'm so thrilled to have you today and to, we both have our tissues ready to go and be able to share our hearts and then turn that for the bright side of how we can impact others through the trials that we have gone through. So I would love to start with hearing a little bit about you and what you do and how you got into aesthetics, and then we can spin back out of control.
Sounds great. Well, before I start, I just want to tell you thank you so much for opening your heart and just being so vulnerable. Like, I think it's so necessary to have this in the industry. It's hard to do. And just being able to have such a safe place to share my story and just hearing your story. Your grandmother is so proud of you. I can just feel that deeply as I heard you speak about her. And I love that connection that you guys had. You and your mom are just incredible. And it obviously is because of this amazing woman who carried you guys throughout your lives. Like, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I just want you to know that, like, I'm holding space for you as you get towards that anniversary date, which I know those dates are really hard. And I just love you guys. I'm really glad to be here and to be able to, like, have this conversation together. So
Thank you so much.
I had to start with that
I
before
know,
I started talking.
I know you feel everything very similarly to how we feel. And I think that is also, you are dealing with an anniversary of your own, which again, we'll get into a little bit later when we first met. And I truly believe that was part of our connecting force, is that place of understanding through the grieving process. And I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Well, yeah, so how I got started into aesthetics, it was like 2016, 2017. At the time, I was a stay-at-home mom of 4 boys. I had gotten married pretty young, 19, just ran off, got married, and started my family right away, and had no intention really, truly, of working outside of the home because I had just had so many children back to back to back, and I thought, how impossible would that be, like, to work and have all of these little ones? And so had no intention really. Prior to having kids, I wanted to be a dental hygienist. I wanted to be 100 things. Like, I really thought I was going to be like an actress, a fashion designer, a lawyer, a teacher. Like, I wanted to be everything. But ultimately, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a wife. I grew up in a home where I didn't have both parents in the home. I didn't meet my mom until I was a lot older, an older child, and I just always so desperately felt like I was missing that part of, like, what a lot of children grow up having is a family. And I did have a family, and I love my parents, but it just wasn't, the type of family that, like, as a child, you just hope to have, as far as, like, having that dynamic. And so I just always said, I can't wait to be a mom and have a big family. I would joke with my dad, I'm gonna have 100 kids. Like, I just had this idea of, like, I'm gonna just have a whole house full of babies and I'm just gonna mom all of them and love them.
Oh,
And
I love that.
I did. I had a lot of kids. I have 7 now, but at the time before I started aesthetics, I only had 4. And so as I started having children, and because you work with young women and mothers, and you're going to be a mommy yourself, the skin changes when you have children. And as you're going through these hormonal stages, my skin freaked out. I never had breakouts up until I turned 19 and started having children, and my skin just wigged out on me. And having no knowledge of skin, I would go to Pinterest and do these, like, silly Pinterest things,
like egg yolk
these
mask
hacks to, like, clear your acne, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, lemon juice all over the face. That felt great onto my skin. But I was so desperate for relief. But we also were a new young family, didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't just go out, and I didn't even know that, like, estheticians were a thing, or that, like, facials cleared acne. I didn't have any knowledge of this. And I remember it was for Christmas one year, my husband had gifted me this little Groupon facial, and I canceled that facial like 4 times because motherhood, like, either a kid got sick or I just didn't have time. I would make all these excuses as to why I couldn't go get this facial. Finally, one day I was having a really hard day. My husband was like, you have to go do this. Like, I paid for this facial. You need to go and do it. And I went and got this facial. Shout out to this cutie esthetician. Her name's Tegan, which was so cool because that's one of my son's names. She gave me my facial, and she created this environment that I had walked in feeling kind of embarrassed, right? And shameful, because here I am, this young girl with acne, and I'm just so insecure and I'm feeling so gross about my skin. I'm washing my face with, like, grapefruit wash and, just, like, doing anything I could possibly do, caking makeup on my face to try to hide this acne, making it worse. Basically, like, total self-sabotage. But Tegan created this environment for me that was so safe, and she was so empathetic, and the way she just, like, touched my skin and educated me and taught me, like, why my skin's doing what it's doing and what I could be using to help it. I literally, in the middle of the facial massage, which is, like, the most comfortable, like relaxing part, my wheels are turning and I'm like, how did you get into this job? And she's like, well, I had acne too, and I wanted to learn how to clear my skin and had a friend who, did it, and I went and I got my license and now that's what I do. And I'm like, I could see myself doing something like this. Now here I am going from a woman who's like, I'm never going to work. I'm going to stay home, if I can, and just take care of my babies, to like, I want to not only learn how to heal my own skin, but like, I want to make women and men and people in general just feel the way that this woman made me feel. And within 4 months of that, I went to a school in Phoenix, Arizona at the time. That's where we lived, and got my aesthetics license. And so I got licensed in 2017. And from that point on, I just had this fire in me of like, I'm going to do incredible things and I am going to make people feel incredible about themselves. I've always battled with mental health. I've always been an anxious kid. I was definitely an anxious mom, and I struggled with that. And I wanted to be a safe place for people because I struggled many times throughout my life to feel safe. I started working on social media back then, in 2017, 2018. There were accounts, there were estheticians that had social media. It wasn't as in demand or as like necessary as it is now. It's definitely blown up, and people, every esthetician has a social media account. At the time when I started, it wasn't so much a thing. There was a few, but not many. And so it was very easy to grow because it wasn't so saturated. It was just like, it was easy to stand out. I found my brand. I'm a very colorful person, as you can tell. I love color and yellow and bright. And my account was just a bright, fun environment, and it drew in a lot of people. And so my first 2 years of starting my social media and starting my career, I grew my account to 20,000 followers, and just created this community of happiness and fun and joy and love, and just being a safe place, like accepting people where they're at, whether you have acne, no matter what color skin you have or what kind of skin you have, like you are welcome in the space. And I'm so glad you're here. Like that used to be my thing, is like, hi, I'm Britt and I'm so glad you're here.
I love that.
Just loved making people feel good. Like, and I'm still that way. However, the struggle was, and you've probably experienced it in your time as an esthetician, is that if you get too far into your head in the industry and you start spiraling too much about where you're wanting to go, it can be a slippery slope and you can start to go the wrong path. And that's kind of what happened to me, is I had grown so fast. I started with this vision of wanting to make people feel beautiful, wanting people to feel good and safe. But inside, I started self-sabotaging by not feeling good enough, by comparing my accounts to other accounts, or comparing my body to other bodies, or my skin to other skin. I've always battled with eating disorders, and I've battled, like I said, with my mental health. And I don't think I was prepared for the industry in that aspect, in the literal beauty part of it. And I found myself declining, and I found myself feeling not as happy about doing what I did. I started to relapse, in an eating disorder. My marriage started struggling. I started working so much that I was like losing sight of my family and my kids. And, my children had started going into school. I wasn't able to be present, for field trips or class parties or all these things that my whole marriage I had dreamt of being able to do, things that I desperately wanted in my childhood. And all of a sudden I was just like consumed in this vicious cycle of keeping up with everybody, keeping up with social media, posting every day, watching the following count. Like it was just like as if my life depended on it. And I lost it. In a very nice way, I pretty much snapped. And in 2019, I had experienced a miscarriage and had gotten pregnant a few months after that with my daughter, Lennon. She's my first little girl. She's now going to be 5. But I had joined a new job closer to home, hoping that I could work closer to my kids, be able to do something I loved still, and also be able to be present more as a mother, because where I was working at the time, I was about an hour away from my home, and it took a lot of my time, just to get to work, let alone working all day and then coming home just exhausted. And so that time was very hard because I wasn't as open. People knew that I was anxious. I shared about that on my page, but I don't think people really knew how bad I was struggling. And I was sitting here holding these seminars and inspiring women. In fact, I mentored so many estheticians that people know very, very well today. Estheticians that are just like traveling all over the world and, very, very successful, were coming to my seminars. I was mentoring them, teaching them how to love themselves and be strong and be well in the industry. Meanwhile, I was just like dying inside, contemplating just life in general and everything. And finally, by the end of that year, I had my daughter in December and started battling very severe postpartum depression, to the point where like I was in bed probably for a good 3 to 4 months straight. Quit my job, couldn't work, and just was in such a low, dark place. And I was battling it again silently. And all this time, as I'm going through these seminars and I'm on social media, I'm having all these women telling me how inspiring I am and how they just like, how did I grow my following that much? They want to be just like me. And inside, I'm like, you don't want to be anything like me. I felt like such a fraud because I started with this clear intention of growing something beautiful, and I let the industry get to me in a way that was hurting me so much, and it nearly took my life, literally. So I stopped the industry for a while and focused and realized there was a lot of childhood trauma. There was a lot of healing that was necessary for me if I ever wanted to come back and fulfill that initial like goal of what I wanted to do. So I moved to Utah. This is where my husband is from. We're now in St. George is where we live. It's southern Utah. So it's like 2 hours from Vegas, kind of like on the border of Utah. So it's not like that snowy, like cold climate that you think when you hear the word Utah. It's actually very desert-like. It's beautiful. But it's just like right on the end of Utah. So I'm in southern Utah. We moved here. It's 2020 at that time. I go, okay, I'm going to get back in here, I'm going to heal, and I'm going to start working. And then the world shut down with COVID. And I was like, great, maybe I will just wait and I'll wait to see how things go. And that time I'm, going to therapy and I'm healing myself and I'm starting to like feel the fog lift from my postpartum and I'm starting to find my worth again. I'd only been out of the industry at that point, for a few months. And so I was still posting like skincare content, kind of shifting my page to more like just content creation in general because I wasn't working in the treatment room. And, decided, at the end of the year, I will start to go back to work. I'll find my workplace. Then I find out in Utah, in order to do what I did, which I was working in dermatology and medical aesthetics at the time, you have to be a master esthetician, which required me to have to go back to school and do an additional 600 hours, which at the time I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do that just mentally and financially, like that's not gonna make sense. So I said, okay, well, I'll just wait until I can make that happen. Well, I got pregnant in October of 2020 with my son, Zeppelin, and thought, well, that was a surprise because, it wasn't something that we had been planning. It wasn't expected, even though we know, right? Heavenly Father has a plan, even if it might not be our plan. He definitely knows what he's doing. And it was a plan, right? It was a planned thing, just not to my knowledge at that time. And so I got pregnant with Zeppy and was very scared because I'm like, here I am just barely healing, right? Like I'm just getting better. My body's coming back. Like at the moment I was relapsing from my eating disorder. So I was like very, very underweight, very unhealthy. Not even capable, I didn't think, of carrying a child because of the way that my health was physically from the eating disorder. And find out I'm pregnant and, of course, prayed about it, was very scared, and then realized this baby. And as I prayed, I realized that I had this answer to me that this child is going to change your life in a good way. And so to just trust and take care of yourself and take care of this baby literally stopped my eating disorder I only focused on my child at that point. I was like, I have to nourish my body. I have to take care of this child of mine. And started recovering and started eating more and feeling comfortable in that. And it was my best pregnancy. He was my favorite pregnancy. I recorded and took pictures every single week. So I had like weekly bump updates that I posted on my page. It was like under the hashtag Britt's Bump Grows. And it was just like I would compare his size in my tummy to like the size of an object. So I had done like, you know, a pint of ice cream. I did a Barbie doll once. I did a mango, like however big he was, or like a bubble gum, like bubble tape, you know, wrap like container. I had all of these things, and I recorded all of this, which wasn't something I did with all of my babies. I had him in June and of 2021, and again was kind of battling with some postpartum depression, but was aware, and you know, this time like definitely more in control. He had colic and was very fussy all the time. However, it felt like it was almost comfort to me because he needed me so much physically. Like he only felt better when I held him. And so literally this child lived on me for 2.5 months straight. He just laid on me with his little ear on my heart. That was how he calmed down and soothed himself. And I just like walked around with my baby for months, you know, because that was the only way he didn't cry. In September of that year, he was 10.5 weeks old, and it was picture day for my kids. I was in a rush, and I had nursed him very quickly. He woke up, you know, he had been up all night. And leading up to this day, it was September 9th, leading up to this day, I kept having like this anxiety, like something weird was going to happen to him. And I thought it was postpartum because, again, I was only 2.5 months postpartum. I thought it was just like postpartum anxiety or it was postpartum depression, or, you know, I was just having these irrational fears, which wasn't uncommon when you suffer from postpartum. That's a very natural thing to go through. I thought it was just my anxiety. And I was very protective over him. However, on this morning, I was in such a rush to get my kids to school. They had just started taking the bus, which was definitely not the norm for us. Normally, I would take all my kids, take them to school, take Zeppy and my daughter Len into the park while they went to school for a little bit. And this particular week, my kids wanted to take the bus. And so with that, I was like, well, Zeppelin's sleeping. I had nursed him and swaddled him. And I thought, well, he's sleeping finally. I'll just let him sleep. Well, I made the awful mistake of laying him on my bed, which again, we never did. He always slept in his bassinet. I don't co-sleep with my kids. I know a lot of parents do. I never did. I just don't sleep good with my kiddos in bed with me. But this particular day, I was like, you know, he's so snuggy. He's content. He looks so happy. I had laid him, you know, down on our bed, and I had gone downstairs. I let my husband know, like, hey, you know, we laid Zeppy down. Got my kids off to school, walked them to the bus stop. That whole morning was just chaotic in general. I was maybe gone like 30 minutes. My husband was downstairs. Lennon was still in her room sleeping, and I came home and I was just, you know, kind of talking with Troy about the morning. Like one of my sons had a hard morning, didn't want to go to school that day, begged me to stay home, and I was like, you gotta go to school, it's picture day, like you gotta take your picture, and which is in such a chaotic, you know, like state of mind. And I got home and I said, you know what, I think I'm just going to go like get the kids ready, and I'm going to go to Target and just like bring a surprise home for the boys because they had such a rough morning. Well, we go upstairs and I look in the bassinet and saw that Zeppelin wasn't there. And for a split second, I was like, where's the baby? And that's when I realized and remembered that I had laid Zeppelin on the bed. And when I found him, he had managed to roll himself over, but because he was swaddled, he couldn't roll back. Like he managed to like wiggle his way over and was found face down on my bed. When I rolled him over, he had passed away. He had went into cardiac arrest, and of course I screamed, and my husband freaked out, and I didn't know what to do. I just like froze, and he said, call 911, and he grabbed the baby, and of course he was crying, and I was trying to get it out to, you know, the dispatcher, like what happened. I couldn't even speak. It took a while. And finally just like screamed out the words like, my baby's not breathing, I need help. And I didn't know CPR. And I didn't know how to save my child. And so when they got there, I didn't even think he was going to make it. But they were able to revive him and rush him to the hospital, where a nurse had, was able to work on him and bring him back long enough that we flew him out to Vegas. In St. George, the town is so small that, they don't have like a PICU or like a children's hospital. So he had to get flown out to Vegas to their intensive care unit and their pediatric unit. And we had this hope, that maybe there would be this miracle that he would make it. But he didn't. And it wrecked my world. It was like I didn't understand how I could heal so much. How all this time, like, I could heal and have this baby that I prayed for, who I was told would change my life for the better, and just be like ripped from me so unexpectedly. And kind of like how you explained with your grandmother, like when it's that unexpected, like sudden loss where like your brain just can't even grasp, it's so traumatic. It's so hard. And meanwhile, I was grieving, through my social media, and I had, my name out there, and people were sharing Zeppelin's story and sharing me, and it had brought a lot of support, but it also brought a lot of hate and a lot of judgment and a lot of blame. And I just suffered so much in this guilt and this lack of ability to forgive myself for making this decision to lay my son on a bed so that he could sleep. And I thought I'll never go back to work after this. I'll never be the same. In fact, I pulled my kids out and I homeschooled them, and I was like, we're never going anywhere ever again. We're going to stick together, and we're just going to heal, and we're going to get through this, and it's going to be okay. And had no intention ever of working again or doing anything in the industry. Now, fast forward a couple years later, my kids tell me they want to go back to school. They're ready. They want to go back and make some friends. They want to, experience school again. They were very nervous about it, but they felt good about it. And I said, I had this impression, like, maybe if they're ready to go to school, I can be ready to go too. And I can go back to school, and I can start working in the industry again and using this experience to just help others and get my mind back shifted into what I initially started this whole career for, to be a light, to help others, to love, and to serve, and use it in a way now that I learned, that you have to have your head in the right place. It's not about the following on your social media. It's not about the opportunities with traveling with companies. It's not about the money. It's not about the material things. It is about making people feel beautiful and know that and feel that inside and confirm that. And that was what I intended to do when I started, and it's what I failed to do also. And so with this whole experience of just like losing my entire world and losing this part of me, literally, I felt like the only way to show honor to him and just like honoring my story and who I am was to go back and try again. And I'm very much that way. I will fall 100 times, but I always get back up and I always try again. I'm not a quitter. I don't like to quit. And so I did. I went to school actually this year. I went back to school in January. I knocked out my 600 hours, took a state board again. All the girls had just started school. I had like 7 years experience. I basically went to school to just go take my state board. It was like I trained and I had already gone through all this, took the test. And now I'm working as a master esthetician here in St. George. And it's been a very scary process. If I'm being honest, I am terrified to get back into the industry sometimes. I was shocked when I got chosen to speak at Aesthetic Next, given I hadn't been in the industry for so long, but I was so grateful for the opportunity because that was what I did initially. I would go out and I would speak and I would inspire and I would lift. And it was very redeeming for me to get back out there and do this again. And so I'm just taking it one day at a time. And at the time during Aesthetic Next, it was, that early September. He passed away on September 10th. So I was very raw and vulnerable. It was just like days creeping up on that third year, anniversary date of his death, which is always a really hard time for me. And as you understand, but it was like redemptive. It was just like, I am capable. Like, I am worthy of healing. I can do this despite this grief that is so heavy that I'm carrying all the time. It doesn't go away. I've learned to just live around it and use it to help people know that they can overcome anything too. And to be able to speak like on here and share this, and to just like pour my heart out to you, I really appreciate you giving me this platform to speak on and to just like be vulnerable and raw, because it's very scary to do that in this industry. Sometimes, you feel like you have to be perfect. You have to look the look. You have to walk the walk. You have to, be on all the time. And that's just not real. Like, that's not how life really is. It's okay to be in this beautiful industry that is beautiful and also have a heavier side to it, and it, have this messy, not very beautiful journey of healing. It's not beautiful all the time, but the outcome of it is, I find that this healing and this just being able to share and just pour my heart out is very beautiful, and it's definitely blessing my career and blessing my work this time in a way that I know, like, it's going to be different, and it's going to be different because of these hard experiences. Yeah.
Wow. I've heard your story before, and every time you tell it, it is just as impactful and heart-wrenching as the first time. It is. Thank you for having the courage to talk about it, because every time you talk about these moments in life, it resurfaces everything all over again. And for you to take this moment to resurface that versus the easy thing to do is to leave it buried. And
Yeah.
it's not the healthy thing to do. It's not using it for a better purpose. I believe that when we bury our pain, it's for nothing versus
Really.
working through it and being able to share it. And I have so many thoughts. Going back to Aesthetic Next and the courage that you had to show up and to speak on such a vulnerable topic during the hardest time of the year for you. That just takes so much. And I truly believe that because of the timing as well, that is why it was so impactful for so many lives. I remember walking into the room for our session, that was with my sponsored session with Elastin. And there was not a dry eye in the entire room. And we knew that you were talking about mental health, but at that point I had not heard your story yet. And it took me back a little bit of like, okay, what did we just walk in on? And clearly there has been a movement inside of this room, and it wasn't necessarily in a powerful way. It wasn't necessarily a room of sorrow as much as it was a room full of unity and understanding of, and people were just meeting each other where they were at and seeing each other for the things that they may carry deep down, and were starting to let that show and feeling like there was somebody else also going through something either similar or parallel to it, where they felt understood in a way. And you brought that to a place that, the aesthetics industry absolutely can be so superficial. And although a lot of us get into it for the good reasons of wanting to help our patients and wanting to be that better side, you're absolutely right. It's so easy to get sucked into the darker side of it, not the brighter side of it,
Yes.
and getting
Yeah.
stuck into that superficial. And what you did was bring that light in a way of understanding of, okay, we are real people going through real stuff. And we have, kind of going back to that mission, like we have a mission to help our patients. Like that is why we
Yes.
are in it. Like, let's regroup. Let's think about what our purpose is in the industry, what we got into the industry
Yeah.
for to begin with. And let's go into it with that mindset every single day, because we are impacting lives. It may not be, we're not the ones in the ICU, but we are the ones that are touching hearts every single day. And we're
Yes.
crossing paths with people that I believe that, the Lord puts us in places that we need to be when we need to be there. And we just have to keep our
agree.
eyes open and listen to him to know why. And, that's how I feel about us meeting. That's how I feel about your impact on it as well. So thank you so much for your vulnerability there, as well as here again,
Thank you.
and continuing to open up about it and continuing to use this as a uniting force of love in an industry that can sometimes get so far away from that goal as an
Yeah.
entirety.
Yeah, I feel like, the industry, like you said, it can be very superficial, especially when it comes to social media. Social media is just a highlight reel. It lets you put what you want to put out there, but it's not always reality. And so I like to create a space that, sometimes is bright and happy, sometimes pours my heart out, but you know what you're going to get out of me. It's always going to be real. It's not going to be me, just pretending with my, whatever it
Curated
is,
life.
my material object, my curated life. It's going to be like, this is me messy today, but like tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to, first I'm going to cry, then I'm going to boss up and I'm going to be good and we're going to be okay. And it's okay to be both. And sometimes you can be both in one day, and what's crazy about the aesthetic next thing was that it wasn't initially planned for me to share that talk. So I was only scheduled to speak on branding. I had one talk for the whole week. And Macy had kind of just last minute was like, hey, we have an opening spot. Would you feel like speaking on something else? What would you like to speak on? I'll kind of just leave it to you. And I literally, without it didn't even take a second. I was like, can I speak on mental health as a provider? Like, I just knew like that was necessary. I was looking through all the talks. There was nothing in the whole entire esthetician track or any tract regarding that. And I'm like, that is such a big thing. Like, people need to hear about how we can manage mental wellness as a provider. Like, it's necessary. You can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. And we all have a story, and everyone's story matters. Every single one, whether you're a client or a provider, we all have a story to tell, and every single one of them is valid. No story is worse or better or harder or nicer. Every single one of them is unique. And in order to build that bridge, fill that gap, is by building these bridges of safety and just acknowledging like it's okay to fall down and get back up and try again. And you might fall down again and again and again, but it's okay to get up every single time. You never have to live in this darkness. You can always find this brighter side, which is what I love about your podcast, is the fact that it's called The Brighter Side of Beauty, because there is such a bright side to it. And even when there is darkness, you can't have darkness in light. So if you just continue to be that, you continue to pour that light into people, their darkness just starts to fade. And it's such a beautiful thing. It really is. And I pray that I can continue to do that, even if it's messy. And, I feel a few times that's my goal this time. It's not to grow or to be what I used to be. It's just to be this broken, messy version of me, but better and kinder and more humble and grateful, just a heart full of gratitude. That's what I need. And it's what I strive, to be. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What I love about that, on a much brighter note as well, is, we've had the conversation of going into the room to share the love of Christ without, necessarily even having to publicize it or talk about it, but that
Yeah.
like we go in with that Christ-like heart to every single patient, every single experience type thing. And talking about, loving people through their darkness and that light starts to come through, that's honestly what, the Lord does for us is what
Yeah.
let's be real. When we are hurting, what we really, really, really want is for somebody to see us and acknowledge that it is valid that we are hurting and to sit there with us
Yeah.
through it. It's not that we want
Yeah.
somebody to come in and fix it necessarily, but we want to be seen. And that is what Christ does for us is we know that we are always seen, we are always loved in the process. And that is something that we are empowered to do as followers of Christ or as just good people in the world is
Yeah.
what we can do, whether you have faith or you don't have faith. Of course, I encourage you to have faith, but whether you have faith or not, you can love people in a way that you want to be loved. It's kind of love thy neighbor as
Yeah.
thyself type concept of,
Totally.
love people where they're at, just see them, meet them where they're at. That goes for a patient walking in and talking about their acne or their rosacea or their melasma or just their dry skin and their uncomfortableness in their own skin or their mental health of
Hmm.
maybe they have beautiful skin, but they feel like they have the ugliest face on the planet. And just meeting them
Yeah.
where they are at and filling them with that light and that love so that when they walk back out of your doors, and it might take several visits, but you're pouring into them when you see them. And on the flip side of that, as providers, it's so important that we're surrounding ourselves with people that are also filling our cups because we are pouring
Yes.
so much into others when we do see them. And if we're going into the day, that can be heavy in itself. And that can be picking up a
Yeah.
lot of burdens from others versus just being able to enter it as I'll give you what I can and I'm receiving by giving, if that makes any sense
Yeah.
whatsoever. But having
No,
those
it totally
positive
does.
connections, having the influence of, me being able to reach out to you and you being able to reach out to me and be there for one another and just acknowledging that genuine connection that fills our cups back up so that we can pour into others and we can continue to share that light. And it's so powerful to be able to do that.
It is. It really is. It's like the whole purpose of doing what we do. It's like, like I said, it's so easy to get caught up in the other part of everything, wanting to be the one on the top, the hustle culture, I want to be, the number one and the biggest provider and the biggest face on everybody's, brand and while that's, nice and it's appreciated and there's a lot of gratitude there, it's not everything. And I've learned just from losing Zeppelin that you can really feel like you have everything and it can be taken in a second. So these superficial things, these material things that sometimes as a world we can focus on, it doesn't mean anything if you are not centered to your core of like your values, whether you are a believer in Christ or not, which, I am. And I feel like I do have a very solid testimony, but I haven't always been, and there's been a lot of times in my life, including when I lost my son, that I was very angry with the Lord and I wasn't on a solid foundation. I was very shooken. If it doesn't matter what you have, the worldly things, it's just noise. You have to be centered in yourself, in your integrity, in your values, and you have to love others. If you cannot pour love into others and be a light, all the other things, they don't mean anything. The car, the money, the success, you can look like you're in your winning season all you want, but if you're hurting inside and you're not capable of like loving people and meeting them where they're at, then everything else, it just doesn't matter. And eventually you just learn, you have to learn like in the hardest way. So I always try to, even with my kids, encourage them, like, it doesn't matter what car we're driving to school. It doesn't matter, what clothes we're wearing today, but are you going to be a good friend? Are you going to be kind? How are you going to help someone today? Like that is what matters. And when you have that mindset, success is just going to be it's going to come to you. The blessings are going to come. The Lord wants to reward his children who have their hearts in the right place. So
Yeah.
even if it takes longer to get there, which for me it is, it's taking a very long time. I'm crawling very, very slowly to where I want to be. I'm doing it in a way now that feels fulfilling. Like I'm not struggling anymore. I'm not worried or comparing myself or falling into this despair because I just know I'm going to get there. It's going to take time, but I'm going to get there and it's going to be great. And I'm excited. So
I'm so
yeah.
excited for you. And I'm so excited that I get to be on this journey with you now as well.
Yeah.
And I
Thanks for
feel
being
so
here with
touched
me.
Yes, thank you for being here with me. I feel so touched that, honestly, I feel honored that I get the opportunity to know you and to be here with you through the process.
Well, it means a lot.
It's an honor. Okay, I like to
Thank
ask
you.
my guests all one very special question, right in line with the bright side of beauty. So the question is, what is beautiful to you? And this can be anything in the world. Just what is beautiful to you?
I feel like I could take this a lot of different directions because I love beautiful things, both outside and internally. I feel like the most beautiful thing is when somebody is able to hold space for others and just having empathy and being raw. That's beautiful to me. I feel like those are the people that align with me, that I feel safe with. I think that there's beauty in just accepting that, like, we are imperfect, and then that's okay. And you just see a light in people who have that mindset, people who can really hold space no matter what it is that the other person is feeling, just like having that empathy and that love and that desire to like want to carry somebody through their hard. I don't think there's anything more beautiful than that. And I find that the most beautiful people are ones that are capable of doing that for themselves and others.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a beautiful heart is what's truly
Yeah,
beautiful. And when that
it
is
is
able to show
the
through,
most.
and when you're able to let somebody else's heart shine through because you're making them feel
Yeah.
safe. We live in such a
Yeah.
guarded world where we do have to protect our heart. We have to put on our armor every single day because
Yeah.
there are just not nice people. And there are also really dark things out there. But on the other side, there are such kind people that enter into every single day with that mindset. And there are
Yeah.
such beautiful, bright things out there. And so being somebody that can make somebody feel safe so that they can enjoy those beautiful things and let down that, that armor, put down that armor is
Yeah.
just the most stunning. Yeah.
It is. It is. There's nothing more beautiful than that.
I love that so much. Okay. Pimp yourself out. Let everybody know where they can connect with you more and follow along on your journey and just be your friend.
So my social media is very, very simple. It's just my name, Britt Deltoro. It's Britt_Deltoro. I try to keep it that way because I had this long name when I first started and it was just like impossible to try to get people to write it out. So it's just my name. I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm very connected to my community. So if you go on there, you are literally a friend. Like, message me, I got you. I connect with all of my people that message me on there. Also, if you're in the Southern Utah area, I am at Aesthetic Co. In St. George. That's where I work and take clients. And so if you're ever visiting and you'd like to come get a treatment with me, you can see me in the treatment room there as well. So those are my two main platforms. And then you can always just reach out to me. You can find me. I'm always somewhere. Somebody knows where I am.
I'm always somewhere. I love that. Somebody can track me down. Send a bat signal up.
Somewhere will know. Just reach out to Britt. She's got you.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I cannot wait to hug you and love on you next time I see you. And hopefully that's really, really soon. I don't think I can go like a full year without seeing you.
Literally, I'm not waiting till September. So we're going to make this happen.
Yes. Yeah, we have to. We have to make this happen.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you so much, friend. Thank you so much for joining us and being vulnerable with us and sharing your hearts. I love you so much. And I know that everybody listening does too at this point. And
thank you,
I'll see you real soon. And all of the Bright Side listeners out there, we will see you in 2 weeks for the next episode of The Bright Side of Beauty. Have a great day.